Hello and welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio. I am the somewhere you're the show that is somewhere between a sort of post-con hangout and a talk show. I'm your host Andrew, and I've pretty much got the whole intro set up there. We are here doing we are here in the world of Cricket Watch 2024, and they're still everywhere. But they cannot escape my convention badge tube technique. And then I just throw them outside and go, get out of here. All those people you're chirping at that you can't find, they're all out here. Deal with them. Not with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need them to be alarms for me.
Mm-hmm.
But this person agreeing, nodding, I assume.
Yeah, the one going, uh-huh.
Audioly nodding is our first guest of two, who you may know from 51, 53, somewhere around there.
Gosh, I don't even remember. It might have been 54.
It was 54. Hey, 54 is
cool.
around 53, I'd say.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I will allow it. It's Kevin Martin. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. How do you prefer, I should have asked this pre-show, how do you prefer to shorten that if I was to use one name for you?
Oh,
Or do you want them all?
K is fine.
Okay.
Van Martin's my last name.
What?
So yeah, K's good.
Sounds good to me. Well, we live in the world of, not only the modern world of 2024, but the internet where names are...
Names are names. Yeah,
names are fully made up things that...
Yeah, that's if you've played my visual novel Death of a Video Star, the protagonist is named Worthy Undone.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I love names are very fun. I love to mess with names.
Yeah, they are. People don't realize that other things don't, like, names are a thing that humans made up for ourselves.
Yes.
Because they're handy identifiers, but also
Mm-hmm.
we can just do whatever we want with them.
Yeah, exactly. The rules are made up,
Right.
so you can do whatever you want forever.
Yeah, so long as, and some people you can, I am bad with names until I'm good with names. But I am.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean I forget people. A lot of times I would just not remember their names. But no.
Oh yeah, I'm horrible at remembering to ask names.
Oh yes, no. I've truly have gone entire 6-hour hangouts at an event before without ever asking someone their name and then never knowing them.
Yes. Yep. Nope. That's been me.
Also, because I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just never see them again.
Yeah. Who knows?
And
then sometimes you get to the third time you've hung out with someone and you don't know what their name is.
Yes, right. And then you see, the technique is to develop a thing that people can identify you by so that they know you. And then you don't have to worry about whether or not you know them. You just always go,
yes.
I do know you. That's a thing I have the fortune of, when going to events, I have a big thing that makes it obvious that I'm who I am. Because otherwise, who would know? Also, people ask anyway, because it could be anybody behind that table.
Oh yeah.
It could be anyone helping me. But we are. But speaking of the thing that I put on a table that I stand behind. Okay, I have an important question for you that I need to ask guests so that I can figure out how to do this in the future. Which is, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Okay, I was actually, because I was assuming this would get asked.
Yes.
And I literally don't remember.
Okay.
I was, because itch.io was kind of the platform that people were like, oh yeah, if you want to get into indie stuff, if you want to get into tabletop, if you want to, play stuff that's maybe a little off the beaten path, you should go to itch.io.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. So that's, I'll do that. And so I'm assuming that Indiepocalypse came up on the front page.
It does that from time to time.
Yes, yeah. So I was looking there and I was like, oh, this seems like the kind of I always want to, find new stuff, find stuff that I might not find otherwise. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I have to keep an eye out for this.
Well, perfect. That is, see, that I feel like I am increasing around to the problem of, as I approach 5 years or whatever, just there's no an easy answer to that question. People are like, I don't know, it just exists, I guess.
Yeah, it feels like it's always there, you know? It's like, yeah, it just everyone knows about this.
Which is
Which I'm sure is great and terrifying.
right, because then I'm like, well, how do I get new people to know about it? Because my one
Hmm.
the one weakness of it is that, well, or the one point of failure is that people don't submit, is the one point of failure too. Or catastrophic financial disaster, but
Well, yes.
that is
Um,
an assumption. So it's always important to ask that question, so I can go, oh. And the answer for most people is, I found it on Twitch, or not Twitch, I found it on Itch. Uh,
mhm.
Imagine someone I can't imagine the person who like finds it through this show.
Who's looking specifically for indie game podcasts
Right. Oh, I found
on twitch.tv.
I happened to log on to twitch.tv in a 2 hour window on a Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
no, that I mean, I'm sure that person exists somewhere.
yeah. But you mentioned earlier, for people who are not familiar, tell me about your inclusion in your game, Death of the Video Star.
Yes, Death of the Video Star is what's the copy that I have?
Yes, what is
Uh,
do you have your pitch all lined up?
the thing with writing, you know, promo paragraphs and like
Yeah.
or trying to like summarize your game in one sentence is you get it right once and then you just use that for the rest of your life.
Yes.
But it is a visual novel about the aftermath of killing God and potentially having to kill her again. More in depth, it's the story of Worthy Undone, who is the person who did kill God and is going through it, is having a horrible time, and now has to deal with the aftermath of a world she created, which is the pitch that I've used for it. It
Yes.
is I made it all in RenPy. It is I've made like one visual novel before this, but it's the first one that I like have put like years of work into. So I think of
Yes.
it as my debut.
Right, and that is the thing that I think I've been thinking about this more often, with like games and how long they take to make. Um,
Mm-hmm.
of like, when I was posting, I think like one of the other the midweek promo for this show, I saw people talking about like, or maybe someone tagged me, it was something
Mm-hmm.
about like UFO 50. Uh,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. I've
the
heard really good things about that, but I haven't gotten to it
and
yet.
people being like, "Oh, this is more developers should do stuff like this. This is more like a template for." And then like that took them like 8 years of
Yeah.
presumably full time work because I think they've
Mm-hmm.
got probably plenty of Spelunky money sitting around.
Oh, for sure.
So like,
Yeah. Yeah, I have been. I mean, I've never been like a full-time game dev.
right,
I have a day job. So it has been a lot of working on this on lunch breaks and after work and on weekends. Like,
yeah,
been the cycle for me.
I
But
used
even
I
then,
used to use
yeah,
Evernote
keep
on
going.
my work computer.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I didn't download Twine on my work computer, but I
Right.
did use it in browser a lot.
Yes, right.
Uh,
Because I could use it in browser, and then it would just sync with my
mhm.
stuff at home, and I would just
Yeah,
hope code worked or something.
yeah, no, you just have to kind of pray. Um, but yeah, every time I make a game, I'm always like, yeah, this is it. I've spent so long on this. And then I'll send it to my friends to play test, and they'll
Yeah.
come back like, yeah, I beat it in about an hour. And I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
oh, an hour, huh?
Right. Right. That's the like all this time gets condensed into an hour.
An hour. Yeah, that's
Right.
kind of just one of the things you have to just kind of accept is
Right.
that I will spend 5 hours on this illustration and someone will look at it for 10 seconds.
Yes. Right. Yeah. How long do people look at masterwork paintings? They're like, oh,
Yeah,
I saw
yeah.
it. 2 seconds consumed
Hmm.
years of someone's life.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And that's just like it's the weirdness. And games have it way worse. Like I feel like
Yeah.
people are not saying this painting didn't take me didn't take me long enough to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Usually.
Oh yeah, no, that was the other worry. Is I remember while I was developing it, there's always video game discourse.
Yes.
But like the discourse of the week was people being like, well, I spent $20 on this game and it took me 3 hours to beat, so I should get a refund or whatever. Uh, so that was the worry of like, well, if it takes an hour to beat, do I charge $1 for like? But at the
Right.
same time,
Yeah. No.
uh,
It's very weird. I've on a desk next to me have two Dunes, and I think collectively
mhm.
this probably cost like $40 and took 6 hours to watch.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I always compare it to movies of
Yeah.
like, I would definitely, would I pay, $10 to watch this in theater? Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a reasonable price to me.
Right. And you can always, if you enjoy it, you can replay it later.
Yes.
And
Well, and
yeah.
it's also because it's, a branching path, you can replay it and also get something different.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the
which
other like very weird
yeah.
thing about games of
Yes.
like people wanting, oh, it's got to be different this time. Maybe because they
Mhm.
feel more like in control. But
Yeah, usually when I'm playing like an RPG, I usually plan for two playthroughs, like one playthrough to figure out what's going on, and then the second to like engage with the story.
right.
Uh, because if I'll play my first playthrough and just be like, this is the kind of character I like to play, whatever, and that I play it, and then the second time I'll be like, oh, if I play this kind of character, that'll engage with these themes better, or
Yeah.
I'm curious how the game will respond to this and that kind of thing.
Right.
Um,
Uh, uh,
yeah, oh, go for it.
no, no. I was saying that's kind of like the curse of games being long. Is I think like
Yes. Oh my god.
I think like most art benefits from like coming in knowing how it goes.
Yeah, having a second watch at it with like, with new eyes, or
Yeah.
being like, okay, how is this working?
Right.
What was I going to say? Oh, I had a really interesting issue where when I sent it to friends, one of the feedback I got was, I'm not sure how I would begin ending hunting for this. And
Right.
I was like, oh, that's really interesting because I don't know if that's a bug or a feature. Like, it's
Right.
hard for me to tell, oh, should I? Because if people want to be like, yeah, I want to see every single thing this game has to offer, I would love to help them with that. But at the same time, I don't want people. One of the things I wanted to do was not not have like a true ending. I didn't want it
Right.
to be like, you have to. I want you to play the game a certain way. I wanted it to feel a little more free form of just, if that's the kind of story you want to tell, you should absolutely do that, and
Yeah.
don't
Right.
feel like I don't want to be looking over their shoulder the whole time, like, oh, that's what you pick. Like, it
Yeah.
can feel judgmental, I think.
Right. Right. And like a lot of times it can be you're this assumption that there is a true ending rather than different endings based on like how you went
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
I don't want people to feel railroaded, you know?
yes, right. Or that they chose like the incorrect path.
Hmm.
Like to go, oh, I made some poor decision, or maybe sometimes making poor decisions can be the right decision. Um,
Yeah.
nothing
And mhm.
is better than a character who makes bad decisions.
Yes, I love that. And so, yeah, I feel like there is kind of this there's ways that it can turn into a morality play where it's like,
Right.
well, you have to be, if you're nice to everyone, you get the good ending, or if you do
Yes.
this, you get, if you're cruel or if you act rashly, then you get the bad ending. And I don't want people to ever feel like it's exercise in behaving correctly. I want people to choose what's interesting and not
Right.
what's correct.
Right. Because like a correct often just can easily boil down to how do I just be a blank slate to rebound back to what this character wants from me.
Yes, yeah. How do I say what this character wants to hear? And which I really love the idea of like another staple of visual novels is relationship systems, which I
Yeah.
love. I love establishing relationships with characters, but again, it can turn into this like, oh, well, this character behaves this way, so I'm going to match that energy,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have completely different energy when I talk to this other character because I need everyone to like me so bad.
Right. Which people
Which
do, but not in the
Oh
same like
yes, people do
not
that in real life,
but
but
not
I think
in
it's more
not in the
interesting
whiplash
to be
way.
like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, to be like, this is my character and they behave this way. How do they get along with everyone in their, most natural state, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, it's right. You need to sort of like play it's the problem with gamers want to win, you know?
Yes, and I get that because I'm a gamer and I
Right.
love to win.
You
But
like to get the guy from left to right and get all the points that you
Mhm.
can get, and then
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's a fun challenge as a game
yeah,
developer to kind of have to combat that instinct of, well, I have to get the best ending or I have to win the most points.
right.
Instead being like, I want to tell an interesting story with you.
Yes, and I think fortunately I think itch is a place where people are maybe more open to that.
I hope
Um,
so, yeah.
it's also a weird thing because I've seen there is maybe this is part of like streamer culture. There was a very good comment I came across that was like, I didn't get it, but I guess I won, or like I missed the hidden meaning, but I guess I won.
Yeah, yeah.
Of like, well, I beat the game. I didn't understand anything it was telling me, but
Mhm.
I saw credits.
I saw credits roll. I think a lot about the Sam the when Her Story came out,
Right.
which is a Sam Barlow game, which is notorious for just being you explore and then you stop when you don't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
And someone said, "Well, when does the game end?" And someone else responded, like, "Well, it ends when you're satisfied." And their response was, "Well, how do I know when I'm satisfied?"
Right. Which is
Which delights me. I
yeah.
love that question of like, well, okay, well, are you satisfied? Do you feel like you're done with it? If you don't want to
Yeah.
play it anymore, then put it down. You don't have to
It
play anymore.
it feels like it's kind of like a microcosm of, or like you could teach that line in class of like people's how people engage with art in the modern era.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like there with art as well. There is this idea of like I have to get it. I have to
Yeah.
understand it. The meaning has to be beamed into my brain.
Right.
Um, Whereas I don't really mind a game or a piece of art that's like, I don't get this, but I liked it. And
Yes.
I wanna look at it longer or I want to engage with it a bit longer.
Right. And
Maybe I
maybe
would understand this game better if I got another ending.
yeah, or maybe you'll get it in like 3 years, and it just makes sense to you.
Yeah, yeah, maybe it won't hit for me until I'm at the fridge 3 years from now.
Right.
Like, hey, wait a second.
I always think of that. Oh no, I'm blanking on her name now. That comic artist with the painting where they hold the person up to look at it.
Oh shoot, yes, I know exactly what picture you're talking about.
Yes.
Something's supposed to happen, and
Right.
yeah, I
But
like that comic a lot. I don't remember who the artist is either.
I have like see a different name exists in my brain. So you know how when you get a different name in your brain, you know it's not the right one, but you can't get rid of it because that's the one that
Yes.
lives in your brain. Linda Barry. It was Linda Barry.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
Legendary.
found it. But yeah, no,
Mhm.
that is it's also it's I think of it like that. It's like yeah, you just sometimes you don't get it, and sometimes maybe you don't realize that you do get it when you don't get it still, and think you don't get it.
Yeah. Sometimes it just needs to sit for a little bit.
Right. You don't need to like rush to YouTube to watch an
Mhm.
explainer video. Death of the video
Yeah.
star ending explained.
Or yeah, like yeah, sometimes you just gotta let it sit for a little bit. And sometimes you just play it and you're like, yeah, I understood that and I
Yeah.
feel satisfied and I don't want to play it anymore,
Right, right.
which is also reasonable.
You can't beat you don't have to try to beat the game or like the art by understanding it.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're not in contest with it. You're in
Yeah.
dialogue with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That mentality, like it helped me with a lot of because I definitely have a lot of like completionist instincts.
Yes.
Uh and I think games in general reward that to a high degree. So it's nice to be like, you know what? If I missed it, then I missed it. Whatever.
Yeah,
Let's.
I have
I'll,
encountered that a lot more in recent times. I'm just like, well, I guess I did see everything. That's fine.
mm-hmm.
Think of all the art in my life I will never experience.
Yeah, there's plenty that I think to 100% something is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't have to be the only way to engage
Right.
with media.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you can just stop and be
Mm-hmm.
done. Speaking of, nope, no, that's not a transition there. Okay, I have an important question for you.
What's up?
Two important questions.
Uh-huh.
First up, what's your favorite type of rock?
My favorite type of rock. I really love. I'm not a geologist, so I don't know the formal names. I love any kind of rock that is multicolored and sparkly. I think those are the best rocks.
Perfect. That is an answer for that question. Now, the second question is the more optional question, which is
The optional one, okay.
uh, uh, well, because this one's not a what, this one's a do, and it is:
Oh, okay.
do you have a favorite Toho character?
Do I have a favorite Toho character? I have not played any Toho. I am gonna look up the characters right now
Okay.
and let me see who vibes with me.
Yes, that's a technique. Uh,
Let me see. It's so hard to tell which of these are like fan characters because there's so much fan art.
I think they are all
Oh, Jesus.
characters, but
They're all characters.
I believe so generally because you can just do the thing about Toho is you can just make a Toho game tomorrow if you'd like to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess they're all official, huh?
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this. She was posted to r/Toho with the subject, "Why do Toho characters usually dress like grannies?" Um, but she has little wings on her hips, which is
Okay.
very enamoring. I'm enamored by it. I'll post an image into the chat. This is
Perfect.
on Discord, and you can
Yes.
maybe tell me what character this is.
Oh
But
yes.
I like the purple hair as well.
Yes,
That's also nice to me.
that is of course a denizen of the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Of course that is Flandre's.
Of course,
No,
naturally.
that's not Flandre. I always confuse the two of them. That's Romelia.
Mm-hmm.
Flandre is the one with the
So
diamond
yes.
wings. They're
Okay, good to know.
there's another one who has diamond wings, and there's a sleepy witch, um,
Mm-hmm.
maids. Also, that's a cool locale, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into Toho. This seems like it has 10 billion
it
characters.
does, and roughly 10 billion games.
Oh,
well,
good to know.
there's like 18 Toho. I don't know your opinion on Bullet Hell.
Oh no, that's a very scary thing to say to me.
Well, fortunately, there's about a million non-Bullet Hell games
Okay, okay.
within the Toho. Not within the creator of. Folks, you can learn all this if you tune into the Indiepocalypse Pledge Drive for my Toho 101 class that I'll be hosting.
Oh, good.
But
Can't wait.
the Creator Zune primarily makes the Bullet Hell ones, but then it
Mm-hmm.
has like with some restrictions, a generally open license to just make Toho games and release them
Interesting.
as free fan games, as paid games. So there's all sorts of styles of games within the Toho-verse.
Okay, I'll have to look them up.
It makes for a very cool thing. It's why I think about it a lot. Somebody used to ask that question every week until I stopped asking it, but I like it because I think it's cool, and I like people to think about Toho and that kind of let's
The
not.
Toho propaganda. That's
Yes.
really good.
Yeah, this is subtle Toho propaganda here. It's like the platonic ideal of you make your characters and then other people can also make things with them. Share and share alike,
Yeah,
But-
that's really fun.
Okay, we are going on our first break. Thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
We will be back in about 2 minutes and 52 seconds. Goodbye for now.
All right, sounds good.
Hello, welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Cacophony with KK or KK or KK. I don't know. However you wish to pronounce two Ks back to back. We are here with our next guest, who you may know from issue 56, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yes, fresh, fresh off the press, or as fresh off the press as you can get. Its final week of being the fresh off the presses release. With Crush Crush Crush. It's Lexican Bob Rao. Lex, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm great, Andrew. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Now I am all wound up, second guessed in, ready
Yeah,
to
no,
go.
conversation with Kay was great. I thoroughly enjoyed that and hearing about the process and the point of view of like the gamers side, like video gamer side versus
Yes.
tabletop, which is actually where I come from. Even though my game in issue 56 is not a TTRPG, it's an actual visual novel. But like it was just interesting to hear there's always discourse
Yes.
and tabletop games, it's the same 5 topics cycled over and over
Right.
and over and over and over again.
Video games have it
And
too. We just have a different five.
yeah, exactly. It's always like you can tell who's like it's their first time is because
Yes.
they engage with it really wholeheartedly, and then once you see it the second time, you're like, oh, is this a maybe you put your 2 cents in, and then the third time you're like, okay, this is just ridiculous, and it's the same thing every time.
Right, right. And then by the third time, you're like, well, how can I half-heartedly weigh in so maybe I can get 3 more followers?
Yeah, it's like let me just say one thing about it because people might not like that I'm not saying anything about it, but I'll say one thing and then not engage so I
Oh,
don't
yes.
like blow it up, you know?
I
I mean, when Twitter was still functional, that's, that's what you have to manage.
I have truly years ago I have truly left the world of what if people notice I'm not talking about it because I decided not everyone in the world has to be a pundit on everything. It's
Yeah, it's bad. Just
Yeah.
like in Inside with Bo Burnham is like, could people just shut the fuck up for 1 minute?
Right.
Like ever at all? Like for just 1 second, please.
and then you realize like I know that is a comedy special and it's maybe an album. That's the extent of I know about it. I don't know what Bo Burnham even sounds like. Like it's also like, oh yeah, right. Every person's world is also super tiny.
Yeah.
It is like nothing. Very few things in life are like ultra pressing. But what is pressing? What is crucially pressing is this first question, which is how did you find out about Indiepocalypse?
So I'm a tabletop game publisher. I've been using itch.io for a few years now,
Yeah.
and so like I see the homepage. I believe I've also like gone browsing for stuff, just like weird things or like new survival horror projects, that pop up on the site from
Yeah.
here now and then. So it must have been the homepage or something, but I immediately looked into it whenever it popped up because like I come from also like a literary background. Like I did poetry and fiction in college, and then was trying to make that my way of doing writing for life.
Yeah.
But I could never quite crack the establishment. I just never figured out.
Right.
So then I was like, oh, I'll just do self-publishing stuff with tabletop games. And so when I came across a zine of like a anthology zine of indie games, I was like, this is made for me. This is absolutely for me because I'm used to submitting stuff. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'll submit stuff. You never know. And like I've submitted so much stuff and gotten so many rejections now that when I submit, I have no feelings about it because I'm like, it's a taste thing at the end of the day for the most part. But if you do take a look at people, what the actual anthology shows, like when I started looking into Indiepocalypse to see like what kind of work, because I was originally going to submit a tabletop game because that's
Yeah.
more what I'm known for, and I want to get more eyes on that type of work. But I'd also published my first visual novel last year of some kind, or sometime, and I did it on Ren'Py also, and it was just like a weird abstract horror. I had a poem. I like fully put one of my poems in one of the endings. It's like entirely just a poem I wrote. So I kind of turned that poem into that project. And so as I was looking through all the cool Indiepocalypse games that were in previous issues, I was like, actually, Crush is a better fit for this than like any of my tabletop games.
Yeah, no, it is right down the Indiepocalypse strike zone.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I made a game for this is great. Yeah, so
I do have some tabletop. I've commissioned, I think at least one, at least two tabletop games in the past. But it's the world of video gaming feels harsh, and where there isn't like the same. I don't know. It feels like you can get there's a slightly more publishing and more, maybe people are more into like ultra indie stuff in tabletop than it is like in games. Like
Yeah, there's I think gamers as like people for like video games are very different from people who play tabletop games, even though a lot of them are gamers, and myself included. I play a lot of video games, but the like sort of standard gamer who has like specific expectations, the modern gamer, modern derogatory, in parentheses. Even though tabletop gamers, people who play indie can be super annoying. People who make indie games can be super annoying.
Yeah,
everybody can be super annoying. But it is people are really interested in experimental stuff because I guess the genre is really centralized. I know like AAA gaming is pretty centralized, but now there's so many. I don't even play AAA games anymore. I'm playing very rarely play AAA games. I can play indie games until I turn blue in the face.
Yeah.
So I guess I think the
Yeah.
tabletop gaming community, the dominance of D&D is multi-generational. So like I think nowadays it's starting to spread out more.
Yeah.
People are interested, are like, hey, let's like just look at this weird thing. You can like publish what's called an ashcan, which is literally like you just print your Word doc to PDF of the game that you have with no images, nothing, and you just put it up there. It's for free usually.
Yeah.
And it's just like people can like read the rules. So like people are like interested in like weird stuff, weird tech. There's lots of blogs. There's like that share RPG tech and all this stuff that's like very prolific. It's a whole like scene of bloggers who write very in-depth things about game design, and so like game design as a whole, but specifically pertaining to TTRPGs.
Yeah.
And it's coming from that side, and also I think I come at TTRPGs even in a weird way too, because I'm sort of new to the scene as well. Like started. So it's like I have this weird.
There's definitely that benefit to the people who are both new to the scenes, but also very much like coming from a different artistic background as well.
Yes, exactly.
Who
I find that like I've hopped around to lots of different types of writing in my life, but that's the one that's held my interest for longest. So writing games is how I started, getting into this. And I always loved games growing up, and I wanted to make video games too growing up, and I just never learned how to code. But then I found Ren'Py, and it's like, okay, I almost actually don't need to know any coding really.
Yeah.
I just need to know very basic things and get the logic of it, and then like, okay, now I can do it. So I had made one little project on the system to like just get a feel for it, and I never published that. That was just like something I sent to my partner and be like, hey, look, I'm messing around this thing.
Yeah.
But then Crush was like, I'm gonna make this a full game, even though it's short, and it is fully. You can see it very well. It's fully born of like my poetry background and my gaming background, which is like I love Game Boy Advance days. Like I love the pixel art stuff. So I'm making pixel art, but also after I played Milk Inside a Bag of Milk by Nikita Kryukov, that's when I realized, maybe I can make a game too, because I saw not that it's like. It's sort of just like a cruder style that you like. It's more accessible. It's like, at least I felt like I had, 2/3 of the skills to make a game that I maybe wanted to make. And so I was like, okay, I'll learn the other third while I figure this out. And that I find is really important in any art field. Like, actually, what I'm known for most in RPGs is a free open license system for making your own tabletop game.
Yeah.
And it's just like a very simple system for beginners. It's all D4 based, so you roll, you know, a number of D4s, you take the highest, and you get your result on a little D4 table. And people have made like over 200 games on this little system.
Yeah, that's
and it's truly incredible. I mean, I can't really take credit for it because people started using it as soon as I posted it, because I posted it as like, almost like a joke.
Yeah.
And then two people were like, I've already made a game, or like, I'm working a game using this. And I'm like, okay, well, let's support that and get that going. So that's the kind of thing I really value in projects where it's like, okay, RenPy is like an easy system to use, and then seeing games like Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk, where you're like, okay, this is not like a whole endeavor for me. Like, I don't have to spend necessarily years and years on this. I can make like a small, compact experience that people will enjoy and remember, which is also the type of tabletop games that I make and enjoy. Funny enough, you know, it's like I love short games, video games as well. Like, I love to get a whole experience. I personally find open world games very daunting and like energy intensive. So I love a little, like, you know, all the stuff that's on itch, basically right up my alley, like a short little PSX style game. You could get me to play any number of those, as long as it's like, you know, 15 minutes to an hour or whatever.
Right. You can fit like 6 of those in a day, you know.
Yeah, it's like I get to see more art. Like, I really do see games as art. And when like I published my first game that I published physically and have distributed is Nighthawks, based on the painting by Edward Hopper. So I really think of games and the game book as like an art object, and you know, video games are the same thing. Like, there's this art object that you can engage with in different ways, if you choose to see it that way. Other people, you know, modern gamers, derogatory, see it as sort of like, oh, well, I'm not getting my time's worth.
Right.
They're just brain rot from being online too much and being like, oh, this is what everybody you know, values about games, so this is what I'm going to value about games. But like, you can value anything you want about games.
Yeah, there's no really particular reason why games have to be a thing that just like you use to like pass time.
It's like people can really express a lot. And what Kay was saying about like the true endings and all this stuff, and I found that perspective. I get that perspective for sure. To me, coming at it from my like sort of like poetry angle, and like fiction angle, when I do the endings, I think of it not as like, oh, this is the right one or the wrong one, but like, I'm expressing like a certain philosophy on the world and a like values system, you know. That's what I find fiction and novels very good for.
I think about this idea of, I mean, it's funny coming from both a poetry background and making games, because I always think of those two as like opposite ends of like this sort of like, I don't know, like literal spectrum of like, people expect what happens in a game to be extremely literal a lot of the time. Where there's an understanding of poetry that like, no, all the things in poems are different things. They're not the things that they say they are often.
It's much more like abstract than people expect of games generally. Everything's very literal in games. That's very true.
It's like, the thing I see on the screen is the thing that's actually happening in the world of the game. You know.
Right.
When games themselves, there's no reason they can be just as abstract and non-literal as any other art pieces.
I mean, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill, like all the Silent Hill games are very like, I mean, there's literal horror going on, but it's really that's not what scares you. It's the like metaphorical horror that's what's scary.
Right. Like, theoretically, you know, James is fighting like dogs with a pole, but like, what if he wasn't? What if this is all just a conceptual, like, it's just all, you know, a representation of grief. And there was no dogs. There was, you know, these broader ideas of, well, what if none of that stuff was real or whatever?
And the other characters are seeing different things, so you don't know what's real. What's not. Like, that's so cool. Like, that's what opened me up to the poetry or the potential poetry of like video games and stuff. And because my tabletop games are all poetry too. Like, it's very I mean, I literally have like blocks of text like between the rules and stuff, and so I find that mode of expression really compelling. I find, especially games, so like it is opposites, right? So my two majors actually in college were creative writing and economics.
Okay.
And growing up, I always had that like the left brain, right brain. I would always get
Yes.
those. I would split right down the middle. Those tests would always give me like, half and half. And
I'm of a similar cloth where I only have a
Yeah.
degree in economics, but then I went and did this.
yeah, and I think what benefits from economics in gaming is like understanding, and maybe this is not really an economics thing, but just like I've started talking about this on my Patreon, but like
Yeah.
the idea of games as economies of meaning.
Right.
And that's how I sort of see them, because mechanics are just, mathematical expressions of something. So if you get rewarded or you get punished for something, that's an indication of value direction from the story, even if it's not from like the author or whatever.
Yeah, I was very much. I came out of that as like economics as the philosophical way of thinking, kind of, output more than, oh yeah, no, this is how you make more money for things. It's like, well, no,
Right.
it's all the balancing of, it's that core idea of scarcity. It's just
And how people make decisions
Right.
like in that context.
It's just the study of scarcity, and that exists in everything. Nothing is infinite.
Right.
And that is how we, like, how do we juggle everything? How do we choose how many lines we want to have? How many rules we have in our game? How many,
Yeah.
how long it all is? How short everything is? And why is my time of like, oh, this 10-minute game, throw it away, don't need it. I need to spend 150 hours on a game so that my life is 150 hours shorter, and I spent some time doing it.
Yeah, and then never think about that again. Whereas you might think about that 10-minute game for years and
Yes.
years and years.
No, I've been thinking a lot about. I feel it's the weird dichotomy of like success, of like financial whatever success, I suppose, versus I don't know, cultural success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And because I feel like a lot of streaming skews things in a weird way, because I feel a lot of things that get really huge off streaming are probably going to be mere blips in our like consciousness in like a year after they come out or whatever, or once the streaming dies out, because they're like, I don't know, maybe like built for like that kind of like group consumption more than they are a person to enjoy on their own time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about the immediacy of the interaction and the like also just like the clippability. It feels like the memory of the stream is boiled down to what the trending clip can be.
Yes.
But then we're not going to remember any of those trending clips a year from now. I mean, maybe there's one that's like extraordinarily bad that we remember, but it's really not anything of lasting impact.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, I'm sure there's some streamers building real communities and stuff, which is cool, but it's not the norm for sure.
No, it's a very odd. It's a very odd thing, because they have like the a lot of the same outputs as just like a general office 9 to 5, but it's all public facing. But it'd be like, what if I had to like, what if I was just streaming my spreadsheets work at work?
Yeah.
And it'd be like not interesting, not exciting, but I would just be doing it. I would get paid, and the curse of making everything a job.
Right. It's the like. I think people sometimes confuse the like urgency of you're monetizing something for survival,
Yes,
versus like monetizing something because you deserve it. And I think those are very important distinctions, because I've always heard people be like, well, if I make it my job, I'm going to hate it. And I've never personally understood that. I mean, it's been about numerous topics throughout the years, whatever it is that people are talking about. And because I guess it is the survival pressure that you put on yourself that will maybe make you come to resent it. But if you're doing it, but the thing is, people don't really have the luxury of doing it not for survival.
Yes, right.
So it's hard to have that mental, like, be able to like switch that mental state to be like, no, I want this to be monetized because I've put work into it and I deserve to be compensated for this art that I'm giving to the world.
Yeah, right. So long as we exist in a world that requires us to have money for everything, you know, you may as well give money to people for the work they do. You know,
Yeah.
you're not no one's
Gotta eat.
like scolding Wizards or EA for charging money for something.
Right. Like, and they're starting to charge, $60, $70 for
Yeah.
games, and an indie publisher charges $30 for a game, and sometimes people lose their shit. But
Right. Right, and or someone on itch charges $1 for
yeah,
a non-zero amount, and they'll be like, "Why does this cost money?" And you go, because I've had that question sometimes, where people be like, "Oh, if it's all free on all these developer pages, why are you charging money?" I'm like, "Well, I went through the effort of curating and organizing these for you, but also I think these people should be charging money for their stuff anyway,
yeah,
or at least have the option to do so."
right, right. It's hard to like command a dollar amount at all when you're like a little developer with a tiny game, but
Yeah.
having it in an anthology gives you that sort of that, like, it's like unionizing
Right,
basically.
I am charging the dollar for you.
Yeah, you're making it so that we get, people actually get paid.
Yeah.
And that's not nothing.
No.
Even if it's like a little bit, it's still, you start somewhere.
Right,
And that's
and-
kind of incredible.
And it helps to like normalize the idea in people's brains that of like, oh yeah, maybe I will pay, like $3 for a game,
Yeah, we do have that in tabletop games. Before Twitter really went down, there was one last wave of like, hey, everybody, let's raise our prices,
Yeah.
so that people aren't like, well, this, person only charged $1 for their game.
Right.
Why is this $10? It's like, well, because it's $10. If you don't want it, don't buy it.
Right. That's the thing of it's the weird balance of, oh, well, everything needs to be free so that people have access to culture. But it's also, do you need access to every piece of art that it was ever made? You don't have the time for it.
Yeah, you pay for other art in your life. Like, you go to the movies, you pay
Yeah.
for subscriptions to, streaming. Like, it's bizarre, the like entitlement that
Yes.
that gamers have. Is like, this price is a personal insult to me, and I'm like, I don't understand how you got there from seeing like, do you really wanted that game and you can't afford it, or are you just like, I don't understand.
Money is also, mentioned money is just
Yeah.
like much like names, money, it's made up.
Yeah.
And like so much of our value around money is like immediately incongruous across everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
A 30-minute game's not worth $1, but a candy bar is worth $2.
Yeah. The candy bar take you a lot faster to eat than playing even the shortest indie game.
Right. And how do you maintain that memory for long? It's like value is all kind of like also made up, and
Yeah.
it's a very odd thing, But I do, but it is why I do link to everyone's pages, because a lot of times they are free there, and I don't require devs to be like, oh, you got to put a price on it, or be like, oh, if you commission a game, once you release it on your own, you have to make sure you put a price on it so it doesn't devalue my work or whatever, because it is,
Right.
I in theory would love it if these were all free.
Right.
But you see always so often, a seasoned, revered. It's within the hyper indie space, you often see, once or every 2 months or so, you'll see someone who is long revered indie dev has no money because
Yeah.
the alternative space offers no money, and they go, I need to be able to live.
Yeah.
Please give me money. That was, fresh on the brain. That was, what's their face? Lilith, I believe. Am I getting it right? Yeah, Lilith Zone. I knew there was something after Lilith Zone. Crypt World was like, oh yeah. How long have people, sung the praises of like Crypt Worlds and their work, and then it's like, I need money,
Yeah.
so that I can live in a place,
with some dignity, you know. Yeah.
Right.
One thing I will say about the like indie tabletop space, there's not a lot of people, but the people who are there are quite generous.
Yeah.
Like one thing I noticed when I joined the space was a lot of people, like a recognizably large percentage of people would pay over by a significant amount.
Right.
And I ended up looking at those people and being like, actually, those were like sort of like the medium level developers in the space. And then once I got to their level, I started doing the same thing because I'm like, I want someone who, you know, may have, there's this, you know, they're charging $2 for their, you know, tabletop game. It's, you know, 10, 15 pages. It's short, but, you know, here, let me throw another 5 on it because I want people to, especially if someone builds on my system, I overpay because I'm like, thank you so much for choosing my system. Like, you didn't have to do that.
Yeah,
I don't
there's
charge
like
any money for it, whatever. So I give them money. I'm like, please build on my system. I love people giving their creativity to a scene that cares rather than like to Hasbro, D&D. Like, start making content for them. They don't care about you.
Right. It's why I never like the mentality of like when people say things like, "Oh no, stick to your own, like stick to and come up with your own crowd," so to speak. You know, because it's like if you have achieved higher status in art, isn't like shouldn't your instinct be to I want to get more people into this and like. Because that's like, you know, it provides health. It's a provides for a healthy art scene if like you are actively where you can trying to be like, oh no, let me invite new people into this crowd, into this community, into like let me boost up smaller artists.
Yeah,
like,
I'm all about that. Lowering the barrier to entry was like my big goal for Caltrip Core, which is what my system's called.
Yes,
is make it so that people will believe that they can make a game because I know they can make a game.
Yeah.
It's just that Hasbro is like, oh, you can't make it because it has to be too complicated. And I'm like, actually, it doesn't have to be. So the document is actually largely, because the rules and mechanics are very simple and one page, and people have been like, why are you want credit for this? This is nothing. I'm like, there's other parts in the document that like walk you through making your first game and giving you the confidence to be like, okay, I am a game designer and I can make games, and it's not impossible. And in fact, it's really fun.
Yeah.
And like, yeah,
like this. I don't. There's probably a specific word for it, but like the hack mod etc. scene in tabletop is where a lot of people I imagine make their first tabletop game of like making like systems seems daunting, but if you can like put your own twist on somebody else's system, like it gives you like that confidence. Like, oh, I made a book, I published a book, and then you get the feeling of having published something. You know.
Yeah, that's very common. It's like a big it's very helpful. Like, and then there's been a whole wave of indie SRDs. I was new to the scene when I released mine. I knew there was a couple others that I was learning from that I credit in mine. But it felt like, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but what it felt like to me was there's a big wave of open license indie SRDs after mine kind of popped off, which I love. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Like, I love that happened because now I'm seeing people with like all sorts of little systems credited on their games, and I'm like, I haven't even heard of that one. Let's check that out. Like, that's really cool. There's Push SRD by Caesar Capital. There's Breathless by Fari RPGs. Lumen is like the granddaddy of like the last 3 years or so. Like, that's what I learned a lot off of, and Wander Home by J Dragon. But yeah, it's so cool to see that I'm such a nerd that I'm not only making games, I'm making systems for you to make your games,
Right.
And that feels like such a weird spot, but I'm so glad that there are lots of people in that space because it's what enables the accessibility of other people who are like artists or writers to make something without having to like really master a whole new skill set. They'll still have to learn a new skill set, but don't like master programming to work on RenPy,
Right. On tools on a smaller scale. But
exactly,
Lex, we've reached the point where I have two very important questions for you. Are you prepared?
I am.
What's your favorite type of rock?
I always find myself really like mystified by smooth, flat rocks.
Yes,
Riverstones.
That is a common favorite.
Oh, good. Like because I'm not from a place where like I'm from Florida originally. We don't have like, at least it's all canals and stuff.
Yeah.
It's nasty, or swamp, which is like the rivers of grass and the Everglades. That's dope. So we don't have those like riverstones that you see in like big bags at Home Depot. But like have been to places in like West Virginia and other places where it's like you look in the water and it's just like that's a round stone just naturally just looking so scrumptious
Yes.
in nature.
That is years of weather on this piece of rock.
It's gorgeous.
And now a follow-up. Not follow-up. I always call it a follow-up. It's not a follow-up. Second question. Do you have a favorite Toho character?
So I have not played many Toho games, but I'm a big Metroidvania fan.
Yes.
And one of the highest rated Metroidvanias on Steam is a Toho game called Toho Luna Nights.
Yes.
And Sakuya Izayoi is the main character of that one. And I think she's into like I've seen other games on Steam that are like Sakuya Izayoi gives you advice or something. Like it's a visual novel where like this character just gives you advice, I think. I'm like, that's brilliant. That's cool. I love the idea of Toho and all the like open license community kind of thing. So she's got to be my favorite. I do love a battle maid character. That's very cool. She throws a bunch of knives. It's awesome. She
And
can
has
like
time powers.
Oh yeah, the time powers, and the whole game is weird because it's just like her mistress like just putting her through a weird dream.
Yes.
Like labyrinth. Fucking. It's like this story don't make any sense, but it's cool.
Yeah.
It's like I love my mistress, so I'll go through with this dungeon for her entertainment. It's cool, and you just like blast knives at stuff and fight like your friends, but in a dream state. So it's not really you don't really kill them.
Yeah, they seem like they fight a lot for fun in the world of Toho. That is, yes. No, I also have you played. We're gonna go to break soon, but have you played that company's other kind of Metroidvania-ish game?
That's the new one, like Tevi or something.
No, their Lodos War one.
Oh, Lodos. Yes, I have played that one.
Okay.
I always remembered it because that has the craziest title of any game, and I always aspire to have that level of like nonsense in my long game titles because I love that stuff.
Was that's Deedlit in the Labyrinth or something like that?
Yeah, it's like Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth, but there's like a title before it too.
Yes,
it's like
Record of the Lodos War, presumably.
Yeah, Record of Lodos War, Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth.
Yes,
that's like, and you find out like Deedlit is like a character and the Wonder Labyrinth is a place, so it starts making sense. But like when you first read that title, you're like, it's bizarre, and I love doing that. You'll see some of my tabletop games have that going on.
Like, are you saying you're not fully familiar with the Record of the Lodos War, the Japanese actual play that got turned into a long-running fantasy series?
I mean, I did after I played the video game. I was like, okay, this is based on a thing.
Yeah,
and I love that just long ass like that. I know you were saying sarcastically now, but I just love that title. It is
it is
specifically one of my all-time like top 5 favorite titles of games.
It is. I obsess a lot. I bring it up because I obsess a lot about those title sequences and how the die rolls to be like the chapter number.
Oh,
and it's
I gotta go back and replay with that. Yeah,
it's like because it was made from a tabletop game.
I gotta really look into that now because that's like now it's like the perfect fusion of my practice right now.
I'm also like a real symphony junkie, and that game just plays like those games play.
Yeah.
But we are going on break. Lex, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Yes, it's true. I love to do this show. It's a lot of fun. But we will be back in about 2 minutes and 6 seconds. Goodbye for now. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Chumps with I Don't Wanna Be, parentheses, a rock and roll star, close parentheses. We're back here with the whole crew, sans one who has stepped away for about a moment, but Kay Van Martin is still here. Hello.
Oh no, I think Lex is back.
Is Lex back?
I did return. I did not vocalize my return, however.
Oh, but you have. See that? I do not have. Discord was one of those things that closed when I was shaking.
It closed when you closed all your windows.
When I was shaking my thing across between my two monitors, then I hit it. The sweet spot Windows was like, I will minimize all of the windows.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been too lately.
Because I like to occasionally play. You know when you hit like the tip of your monitor and it makes a little like that kind of like little opaque thing of like, do you want me to fill the screen?
Yeah.
And I go no, and I go over to the other side of the monitor and I do it on that side too as a thing to keep my hands busy.
Mm-hmm.
But enough of silly habits to keep our hands busy. Now, okay, I have a question. I know we're all gamers here, but out of curiosity, do you have any familiarity with tabletop gaming?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a huge tabletop fan. That's one of the main things that I get on edge, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I actually have I'm playing Dungeon World with some friends later tonight. And I have like a weekly game going on with some friends. We're playing the Dragon Age RPG because we're all
Oh,
excited for the new game to come out.
very
Um,
fun.
so yeah, no, I'm a huge tabletop fan.
Which one is Dungeon World? Which one?
Dungeon World is powered by the Apocalypse.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very much like it's very much like kind of generic fantasy setting, but like pared down a bit.
Yes, I was what was the one? No, DCC is what we were playing recently, because they make those fun little scratch offs for DCC, which
Awesome.
which I really like is like a character sheet. You get it's your character sheet, but you don't know what your stats are until you use them, and then you scratch them off as if it were a lottery ticket.
That's sick.
Oh, that's really cool.
Because DCC has a lot of character death, you know.
Yeah.
Like the character building, like the session one is like you make 4 characters, and then whichever ones make it out of it alive are your characters.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think that's one that's famous for like you can die in character creation or something.
Yes, yeah. Basically, because that is basically like your character creation is when you were like 0 level. Everyone starts as like level 0. Kind of like we all are in life at level 0.
Yeah.
Of
just commoners.
Just regular people who like know if you punched me in, like if I got stabbed, I would die.
Yeah.
Even one time. If I said even one
time.
I would simply, I have like 2 hit points.
Yeah.
If you punch me, I will tap out of the fight. I don't want to get punched.
No, I've never been punched in life, never planned to be punched in life. Seems like not a good life goal. It also seems like not very, it's one of those things that seems like not hard to do, to go through life without getting punched.
For some people, it's really hard, but
right. That's one of those things where it's like some people have a real hard time with it. It's like I've never done that, and I think I can imagine a life where that never happens to me.
You're living your dream. You've accomplished the goal. You don't have to.
My goal is to not get punched.
Yes, I'm
so far I'm doing really good.
I'm going for my no hit playthrough of life.
Yeah.
I'm doing pretty good so far, but there's the stress because it could happen at any moment.
That's right.
Exactly.
RNG
and then
is
your
ridiculous.
Streak's over.
Yes. Then then my streak, I don't get the pop up. I don't get any of the points.
You don't get the achievement. You don't get anything.
I have been playing a lot of retro achievements though, not for the achievements, but I think it's neat sometimes. And also, and they're like I don't know, they're bounties and their weekly things are fun ways of like, oh, let me play this game. You know, it gives me an excuse to like a way to navigate the infinite of all of my legally dumped games that I own, of course.
Yeah.
That I play through emulation legally. Listen, if people aren't making it easily accessible, like, what's the point?
Like, no, exactly. If you could buy it legally, then I'm sure you would. But
right, I'm not paying like $600 for the Misadventures of Tronbon. It's just not happening.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like the company's getting the money anyway. It's the reseller.
Right. Although I think theoretically Capcom has released that digitally, but you know, that was an example of a very expensive one.
Mm-hmm.
We could always talk of the slightly declined in value Rule of Rose, because they found $1 million in a warehouse or something weird like that.
Oh,
or they found
Wait, really?
Yeah, there was like some and they found like in some like Italian game. I forget the story of it. It was like somewhere in Italy or something. They found like a pallet of Rule of Rose, and it like decreased the value recently to some extent.
Awesome. That's
Oh my
great.
gosh, that's so
They just forgot to
funny.
sell a whole. I mean, just like if I to like move the whole palette. I know it didn't sell very well for whatever reason, for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons, but like that's crazy to find a whole palette. You like affect
It might.
the
I
whole
mean, it might not
market.
have been a pallet, but you know what I mean.
But still enough to affect the whole
Yeah.
market, which is however much that is a lot. Feels
Yes. Because like I remember it was like even like one of those rarities, you know, around the PS2 era of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, look at this weird survival horror game in schools. It was a late era PS2 game, I think. But those kind of things, like, you know, those are the sorts of things that are peak for, you know, hey, look, we've got this on our subscription, or we're re-releasing it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising they haven't. And same thing with what's that other Capcom one with Fiona.
Is that the
and-
one with the dog?
Yes,
Hunting Ground.
Hunting Ground. Yeah, I'm like I've seen so many video essays on it. I'm surprised that like Capcom hasn't re-released it or anything.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it feels like people are we're preaching a point where they're referencing Kuon on this website along Silent Hill and Rule of Rose. Kuon's cool too. I played it. It's like a FromSoft game. And when I was playing a lot of FromSoft games.
Right. I did see. I think I saw like one video essay on that one.
It's like this like dual character sort of thing. Anyway, but yeah, no, I think we are sort of like reaching the point where people grow up with games, and like games have always existed, and like tech progression ended like 2 generations ago largely.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't that same like, oh yeah, no, every 3 years a new console comes out, and it's a massive technological leap, you know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I feel like people are starting to, you know, as more generations come up, they're just starting to view games more holistically, which is where you're getting like a bunch of like Hunting Ground video essays, you know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For
And
something
like they even say with like Rule of Rose, like someone's like, this game is frustrating to play, but it's still like one of those classics that Capcom could re-release. Although they did recently do like the Marvel versus, or like a bunch of the versus fighting games,
Yes.
like X-Men versus Street
Oh,
Fighter.
yeah.
Apparently the Marvel versus Capcom 2 one, like they listened to people about like they had patched out the Juggernaut glitch and then they put it back in the game like as an option or something. So it seems like it might be a cool thing, because otherwise people were playing it on Fightcade and using, you know, emulation and like third party online to play the game. It's like, well, they can, the company should just re-release it. Although, and that one's fun because there's like a ton of glitches in it, so they have to purposely publish the glitches, which I find really, because that's what the fans love about that game.
Yeah.
that game is like, you know, jank embodied. You know, it's like they're clearly ripping sprites from a bunch of different games. Like the art is
Morgana's from the other one. Yeah.
You're right. Morgana, because you got those really thick borders. Morgan, you're right.
Yeah.
But and like some people probably come from CVS2 and everything.
Yeah. I find it really interesting too that like fighting game players say they want balanced games, but the most loved games of all time are these like absolutely busted, like everyone's broken and like just absolutely disgusting mix-ups and stuff that's like you can't, nobody can, it's just a coin toss, and nobody likes that in modern games, but people love the old games for it. I find that sort of cognitive dissonance. Maybe it's not cognitive dissonance. I just find that really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a nostalgia to it, I think.
Yeah.
Though honestly, like just speaking of like jank and like just kind of bad mechanics in games, I've like my wife and I have been playing LA Noire lately. That's kind of been our thing we do in evenings. Which I played it in high school. This is her first time playing it. And there's so much about that game that is like kind of just kind of like bad to look at, or that is glitchy or weird. My favorite bit of cognitive dissonance in the game is that you're playing this like by the book, like straight edge cop, but then he has no choice but to drive like a maniac.
Yes.
Because the driving controls are so messed up in it. But the stuff like the goofy facial expressions, or the way the textures look really weird, or how fast you have to drive your car at all times, is like endearing me to the game more than if it had been like, perfect and polished and hadn't kind of like sucked a little bit.
Yeah.
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 There's that quote that's like, I forget who it is, but like whatever the like ugly part of a technology is sure to become its signature.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, yeah, the thing that people criticize about something is going to be what everyone emulates when they're, yeah.
like
That
the
sounds
VA
like, is that Brian
filters and
Eno?
stuff.
I feel like it's Brian
That
Eno.
sounds correct.
In my mind, that's a Brian Eno quote, but I could be wrong. I could be in the entire wrong field, but I don't.
Yes,
I'm
it
not.
is. It's Brian Eno. Yeah.
Ah, nice. Thank you, Mr. Windows
Oh, yeah.
Sound Creator. Um, but yeah,
And that's like with PSX games, you know,
Yeah.
like I love the PSX style, and you know, because of the blocky polygons, you know, that are not very realistic, and you know, the low poly style was just that's how they had to do it for
Yeah.
the memory and all that stuff. And now it's like a whole, I guess it is also a nostalgia thing too, of people growing up
Yeah.
with that and being like, and also it's like more accessible for indie creators to make nowadays
Yeah.
versus like, you know, a high polygon model and Blender and all that stuff. And so it's kind of like a golden spot for, I'm really happy that this is like a cool thing that everybody likes. I'm like, I love this too, and I want to figure out how to do it myself. That might be my next project after the one I'm working on now.
Yeah, I feel like
yeah.
if like the game industry just like regressed a couple generations technologically, it would be like
Yeah.
it would also be like way healthier.
Yeah,
Dev
it would be
cycles
easier to make the games.
Dev
Yeah.
cycles would be way shorter. Teams could be way smaller. Everything could be a lot leaner, you know, and everything. And people it clearly show that people don't mind that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People want to buy more game. Like I'm sure people would buy, like if you made like for a AAA game the same amount of time you made 3 sort of smaller games.
Yeah.
$20, $25. People might pay 3 times 25, 75, which is more than they would make on a full, you know, AAA title at $70.
But that's kind of like
Yeah.
the curse of art right now, because
Yeah.
I feel like somebody said, was it like the Zone of Interest director? Somebody said that recently, like the Oscars. They're like, wouldn't it be great if we made like 4, you know, $3 million movies instead of making one $30 million movie?
Mm-hmm.
And
Because after a while, you just get like diminishing returns.
Right.
Like, you can only throw so much money at a project
Right.
before you just don't really get anything out of that additional cost.
And then sometimes like I'm doing a small bit of curious. I'm looking to wonder, like, I'm gonna look up the Oscars for 2003 because I want to check something to see of like the longevity of good, you know, quote unquote good art versus bad art, you know. Okay, you know, maybe Chicago. Maybe people still think of Chicago doesn't count. It's a friggin' musical. But I was wondering, like, how much do people think about like The Room still compared to, you know, the quote unquote best films of 2003? You know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, my spicy take is
Yeah.
that I think The Room is a good movie.
Yeah, so I think we have weird, like, I love you know, for lack of a better term, bad art, you know.
Yeah, I think that I mean my criteria for it is I will watch The Room on purpose. I've watched it multiple times. I've shown it to friends.
Yeah.
At that point, it's a movie I enjoy, regardless of whether it is, you know, a quote unquote well-made movie, or whether the guy who made it is like not just kind of a horrible person. You know, it still is if it's enjoyable to experience, I think that can be that can still make something good. And you can get into that with stuff like the Pathologic Classic, which I think Pathologic. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble if I compare Pathologic Classic to The Room. Pathologic Classic is better than The Room, I will say that.
Right.
But like a lot of the stuff that most people might consider like bad or janky about it is the appeal.
Yes. No. In replaying a lot of the Castlevanias recently, I'm just going to go. I will go toe to toe. I might get my first punch by just saying, actually, the voice acting in Symphony of the Night is good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love bad voice acting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this.
You are. You're allowed to.
Okay. Well, I love shitty voice acting.
Yeah. No. I
think it's always good.
But it's also arch and like dramatic for like the subject matter of fighting Dracula.
Yeah, it sets a tone.
It feels like of the tone of like something like a Bela Lugosi would deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such a like flowery, overly florid language. Oh, it's beautiful. Like, and that's like this like. It's the problem with trying to find, the idea of objectively good art is that it doesn't exist.
Oh yeah.
And it's all just kind of like a mess of stuff, and like who knows what people will like, or things, people don't realize that The Thing was poorly reviewed and bombed.
Oh wait, really?
Yeah, right.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, because I've only ever heard good things about it.
Right. It's like a modern, consider a classic of like horror, but it like bombed, and I don't think it was well reviewed either. And
there's the difference between critical success and then financial success,
right?
And
yeah, I saw I saw an end cap at a Spirit Halloween, or a picture of an end cap at a Spirit Halloween, for a modern spitting character, I'll call her, and that is theoretically a lot of monetary success, but culturally doesn't matter, like it's the weirdness of our life, and how like money has such little to do, as it turns out, with like how things like last in life, and what we'll consider important 6 months from now or 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Money can only buy you so much time.
Right.
Time is the most finite resource.
Yeah.
For us, anyway.
And it's like, but also it's also hard to tell people, hey, don't worry, you will be very culturally important in 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're like,
especially, you're trying to make a living now, and it's like, well, I would like to be around in 10 years.
I would not. I don't.
See the cultural importance.
I don't want to be the curse of being a cult author.
Yeah, exactly.
People handing around statues of my head after I'm dead and penniless. But that does nothing for me, actually.
Yeah,
right. It's the cruel dichotomy or whatever of it all. Oh, I didn't even realize that fellow was on here on this Wikipedia page for The Thing, Mr. Howard Phillips.
Oh.
But it makes sense. I mean, Carpenter worked in some of that stuff. I mean, Carpenter himself as a director overall has been kind of, I feel, been like reevaluated recently, from being like a schlockier kind of guy to, oh no, he's a really talented director,
highly revered.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now.
And it's a kind of like, people interpret things. Sometimes art itself broadly takes time. We talk about sometimes it personally takes time. Sometimes it culturally takes time.
Yeah, to digest.
Yeah. And the whole Marty McFly, you guys aren't ready for that yet.
Yes.
Right.
Your kids are gonna love it. The whole thing.
Yeah, it's a thing you don't want to tell people, because you don't have a time machine to experience the pleasure of of it. But that's weirdly where I settled like 2 years ago. With my whole project, is very much like, and I feel like I am starting to feel that more recently. The longer I do it, of, oh no, this is a thing not for like the prior uh, generation of like developers and critics and journalists and whatever who are still very mired in the traditional blob of indie and like games as a singular space. But for like a newer generation where it's like self-publishing is a thing you could always do, itch is the thing you can explore and find new stuff on. It's like, oh no, this is right in that wheelhouse.
Yeah, and what's exciting for me about things like, itch.io is that you can kind of, build a portfolio.
Yeah.
So, if you release something and it doesn't take off immediately, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, right.
So, if in 10 years people are like, hey, hold on, this 10-year-old game is actually really, really good, then they have that opportunity. Or, a new game comes out and someone else checks out. I'm sure when Inscription came out, that was great for the sales of like the Hex.
Yeah.
Because, it's the same developer and people want to see what else that person is doing. I don't think everyone did, but people still are curious,
Yeah. Yeah, there was so much that also like people's, indie devs like, oh, here's our big game, and it's that person was making game for like 10 years,
Yeah.
They're like, and releasing stuff, and you're like, oh, they finally just one breaks through every now and then. And you never know when one will break through.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, like his stuff goes back to, oh no, it doesn't have a date on it. Curse you, Daniel. Curse you, Daniel Mullins.
Oh, is Daniel Mullins not dating his games?
He did not date his games. Oh wait, but he did submit them to Ludum Dare. So when was Ludum Dare 22? Ludum Dare 32. It's prior to 2022, so these are probably a while ago. Ludum Dare 29. When was that? Let me see. You think you can escape me? I will find you like I find people's emails. Like I am. Oh no! It just says April 25th to 28th. It does not say when, but I'm sure I can find a published date on one of these games. Okay, yes. So 10 years, 2 months ago. So yeah, making games, releasing them publicly for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly long time, and I think people like often forget those sorts of things.
Yeah, people see what they see as an overnight success is actually the culmination of a lot of work for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, like years and years of, even if it's the first game someone's released, they probably have still, there's probably drafts. There's still all that time that was spent learning how to develop and learning how to do whatever needed to be done in that game.
Or coming from a different medium, like this very...
Yeah.
Most people did not pick up like, art for the first time and then knock it out. Like I made perfect art my first time approaching art.
Right.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah, definitely.
All the breakout successes that we see online are just another, like if you look at sort of, even like I think about the back rooms at Kane Pixels making that series, there was a young kid that blew up overnight, 16-year-old kid, but he had been making VFX stuff for years as a kid. Yeah. And that is sort of like, he's new to the scene, or this is the first time people noticed him, but he's been working for years, and that's, I think especially when creative types like ourselves compare ourselves to other, like when we see other like indie projects blow up, and it's like, well, okay, there's probably a lot more history behind it. Just because we haven't heard of them doesn't mean they haven't been around.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like a healthier outlook to be like, hey, that person probably put in a lot of work, and I'm just going to keep doing it until, maybe that what happens to them will happen to me, maybe not. But if you like making games, you just keep making games, and that's kind of that's why I keep doing it. I'm like, it's fun.
Oh yeah.
You can't make it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, one of the things that's nice about indie games is that there is very little money in it.
Yes.
So that the people who, consistently make games and who keep making stuff a lot of times are doing it for the love of the game, which is
Right.
which is fun. Which, yeah, I enjoy that a lot.
That's why it's all the stuff is so good, or a lot of the stuff is so good.
Yeah, because they're making stuff that they're passionate about and not stuff that has tested well or that they is going to sell.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I
you're
love the weird stuff.
right. It's built out of
Mhm.
their own. Oh my god, their own like kind of curiosities and experiments, and like you get more of the sense of their own sensibilities and less of. Well, I think this will do well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But yeah, a formula that everyone knows will sell well versus this unique object that maybe will. There's nothing else like it in the world,
right.
and that someone puts a little bit of their soul into that thing versus, how many open world AAA RPGs, are you
Yes.
gonna play?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Why, like LA Noire? Why it has open world because it had to have open world in it because that's a
Yes.
thing games had.
Which it's been so fun. My wife has the controller, and it's been so fun watching her just completely bypass all of the open world stuff
Right.
because she's like, I don't care. I don't want to play any of the open world stuff.
Right. I don't think it was intended to be in the game in the first place, but you have to like
Mm-hmm.
meet expectations, and that is why the it's what's good about the things like The Room is like
Yeah.
for better for worse is a lot of Tommy Wiseau in that movie.
Yes, Tommy Wiseau put his entire soul into that movie, and as much as his soul is kind of rancid
Yeah.
and kind of bad, it makes it an interesting thing to look at.
Right. Right. You
He really did put his whole Wiseaussy in it.
yes.
Yes, he did put his whole life to see it.
And I, as another human, can connect with that other human across the screen.
The
And
magic
this
of
guy
Yeah.
seems kind of horrible.
Yeah, no, that's I really like God, who made not Flex I always confuse with Flex Mentallo, not Flex Mentallo. The that old comic, the Stardust the Super Wizard, Fletcher Hanks.
Okay.
I always think about Fletcher Hanks, who made like kind of bad sort of, but they're kind of like these outsidery comics in the early era, and like
Mhm.
his legacy book that was put out like talks about it was kind of shitty,
Mhm.
in the front of it. And, like sometimes like people are kind of just shitty, but they make interesting things, and sometimes like that is your legacy of being kind of rancid as you say, but also interesting.
Mhm. Oh yeah, definitely.
sort of like accidental genius, or maybe it is not accidental.
Yeah.
It's just like genius coming
Mhm.
with baggage, essentially.
Right.
I guess.
There's also the curse of the unfortunate part of life, whereas not everyone who makes good art is morally upstanding,
Right.
Oh yes, for sure.
and it's
And
like
what I do find interesting is the cases where someone makes art in spite of them being terrible. So I'm thinking about like Orson Scott Card and
Right.
Speaker for the Dead, which is just a sublime book about empathy. And I mean, there's a lot of white saviorism in it too, so I won't excuse that. But
right.
like, there's like something really special about it. And somehow this horrible warmongering homophobic man created this. I'm like, how does that happen? Am I limiting the scope of what a horrible person can produce? Am I
Right.
thinking that? But like, how do you accidentally make something so beautiful and aligned with my values when your values are so opposite to mine? I find it baffling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's like
Um,
that just that weirdness of life, and kind of like modern consumption as moral character.
Yeah.
mhm. It can also, I think, sometimes get us into like problems of auteur theory. Like I remember, my favorite show of all time is Revolutionary Girl Utena, and which is a show that has a lot to say about gender and about sexuality and about sexual assault and that sort of thing, and a show that has been so helpful for people who have been through predatory situations and that sort of thing was made by someone who there have been reports that he's been like creepy to underage girls at conventions, and people were like, well, okay, how do he make the show then if clearly doesn't, walk the walk. If he's making this show about guys who are creepy to underage girls and how that's bad, then what is he doing uh, in his personal life? But Utano was also the production of an entire artists collective. Like
Yeah.
a bunch of people had their hands in that. There were manga artists, there were character designers. Like, I think that sometimes we can limit ourselves just by being like, well, one person put their entire morals and their entire world state and being and soul into this project, when in reality, even as a solo dev, my work is still influenced and takes a lot from just the people around me, the people in my life, the art I consume, like all of that kind of stuff. And also, and which becomes even more when you're working in a team, which most games are made in a team.
Yeah. Like auteur people, I think where the term comes from film, right?
Yes.
And people, like in film, it's the most obvious of, wow, these auteur directors who are these clearly solo visionaries sure do like to work with a lot of the same people.
Mm-hmm.
Almost as if it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, there's that famous story, which I haven't looked into, so maybe this isn't true.
Right.
But there's the thing everyone says about the first Star Wars movie, which is that the first cut of Star Wars was unwatchable. It was absolute garbage. And then an editor got her hands on it and did a re-edit of it, and we have the, for better or for worse, long-spanning franchise that we have today.
Yeah.
We have this movie that changed so many people's lives.
I heard it was his wife, or is that not?
I think it was George Lucas's wife.
She was used to cleaning up his messes, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems like it. But yeah, so it's so interesting how many things are so collaborative that we don't necessarily think of in that way.
Yeah,
that's a perspective I did not think of, because I come from like poetry and fiction and stuff where you share it, but like the act of it is very solitary. And to this day, I still find my writing is very solitary, although a lot of people do collaborative writing. That's awesome. So I'm like, I'm thinking from that perspective. But yeah, for movies, I was always like, aren't there like, the director didn't write it in most cases, so like the writer made, like there's a whole lot of people who did stuff and made creative choices involved in this. But even with novels and stuff, there are editors, there are friends, there are all these things, and people who perhaps are like you keep around because they do make you better and they make your art better also.
Yeah,
and also like creative influences, I think, can also be just as much of a teammate in the collaborative process as real people who you speak to.
Right. That same Star Wars movie doesn't exist without like Flash Gordon, serials
and Kurosawa,
right,
or whatever the samurai movies, all these different influences. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We're all the product of. That's such a good reminder, because even when I'm thinking of a solo auteur in like a literal sense myself or whatever, I'm still collaborating with everybody who came before me and who are just making art at the same time as me. And in fact, like all my RPGs are the credit other modern RPGs that influenced me. So it is, as much as it is like a solo practice, you're not alone.
Find a person that says like, no, I created this all from my brain. I am all myself, and you'll find probably the most deluded, self-involved person you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yes, you'd find a liar, right? like nothing really comes from like the self, really. It's
and
all.
I always love. Keep going.
No, go ahead.
I always loved that you brought up in like tabletop games. They usually credit like, the other. Here are the games that I played that inspired these mechanics, or I always loved that they included like the touchstones of like what media. So like if you want to run Life is Strange, the RPG, you should go play Alice is Missing. Like or like if you want to do Dishonored, go play Blades in the Dark, that kind of stuff. I always found that really just inspiring. I feel like the tabletop community has such a good culture of like people acknowledging what came before them and what they're influenced by.
Yeah, there's this sort of air where it's very collaborative. I think because of the nature of like ideas that like because like the games are made more of ideas than like mechanics and assets. Or like I guess I should say more than assets, because it's like when people feel like you're stealing your gaming assets or whatever it is, they get upset with you. In the tabletop, it's like we're all sort of pulling from the same pool of games. We're playing games together, and that's like our experience of the games are often are more than often than not social. So like it, I remember talking to. I was very fortunate to be invited by April Kit Walsh, the creator of Thirsty Sword Lesbians, to a panel that she did a couple years ago. And she was talking because she helps with she's consulted on like the Creative Commons license and stuff. So her whole thing is very much about open licensing and how that fosters creative communities. And she was just saying like modern copyright law is incompatible with the way humans make art. Like we create art collaboratively.
Yeah.
But this system is very like, oh, I own this thing, this particular unit of thing to the exclusion of others, even though others may have contributed, and it all comes down to like who gets the money from it, because that's like who owns the capital or whatever. So it's like the way we can recreate that environment is through open licensing, according to her, and I tend to agree. And Toho Project and all these like free tools like RenPy and stuff is I think that's the future of art, of like good art or
Right.
bad art that's also fun. I think bad art that's fun is good art, but
Yes. No. There's a monthly show that was it shifted, like many things shifted online, but was hosted in Boston called Trash Night, and I think they usually have like a pre-show scrawl about the movie, and one thing that's stuck into my brain that it hasn't left was, I forget what movie they were describing, but they said they may not have made a good movie, but maybe they made something better.
Yeah.
I love that.
And that kind of phrase just like sticks in my brain now forever. And yeah, like unless someone is like literally just taking what you made 100% and republishing it, like
Right.
nobody is going to make the thing that you made, even if they use
Exactly.
a lot of the core elements.
That's why I was never afraid to share I was very big. I shared my writing a lot growing up.
Yeah.
Because mostly I needed that affirmation from people, but also I knew there were a lot of people who were like afraid of posting their stuff or sharing their stuff because other people would, steal their idea.
Yeah.
But like you said, I would always tell them like, no one's going to make the thing that you can make. Writing a novel is so hard that there's no way they could do the exact, like you have to pull from so deep to finish that project that it's going to be a lot of you that is, and the unique parts of you that's going to become what's cool about it.
Yeah, the thing I finished I just finished up, and that's coming out as part of that like Iron Circus collab, is the product we were making is like a fake like a retrospective of a video game company that never existed. And my partner was like, oh, he was like feeling anxiety, like it's kind of like UFO 50. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's nothing like it in a lot of ways at the same time. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
An anthology. Okay.
yeah, right. And also like UFO 50 not just like those DS Game Center CX games,
Yeah.
and and is UFO 50 and are those games not just like Action 52? Like there's like so many things like on the broadest terms like will be similar to something that's already made. And I guess it's like, are you making a piece of art or are you making a product? And if you're making a product, I think it's a problem maybe, but
I've had people like defend my system whenever someone else comes up with like a D4 based system. I'm like, I didn't invent the D4.
Right,
I
right.
made one system. I didn't create.
That's not a bespoke die. Just for
Like,
the game.
yeah, you want to make a D4 system? That's awesome. Like,
wait. Well, Lex, I've been buying all of my D4s custom from your website because I thought you were the only person who made D4s.
Exactly. I very much sell them on my website. I don't. Because I also have the patent on D4, so everyone has to pay me
Yes.
when they use them.
Yeah.
And in their systems, no, it's like that. But it is also like the reason everyone has to be defensive is because people are just trying to like survive and eat and make a few dollars, and so it's very much the like Parasite or like the Squid Game thing of the terrible things we do to each other because of the higher ups who are stealing all of our money.
Right.
And it's nasty, but we have to like I think we have to take a step back and like look at each other with this perspective of like we're not enemies. We're trying. There's way more pie than they're telling us, and
You're right.
the pie
Yeah.
is there. We don't have to fight over this little this little piece. There's a lot more, and they have it.
Yeah, one of our upcoming questions is about questions, that is to say state questions, is about bringing up tip staff to the state minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
And the arguments about that sort of things, like, oh well, we have to lay people off, we'll have to anything that would cost a company money. It's always like, oh well, we can't pay people, we have to lay people off, we have to close stores, and none of these things conceive that the person at the top could make it less money.
Yeah,
like it's
You
not
can
even
have one less yacht. Like,
right. It's not even a thought that like, oh no, if the people at the top just made less money, all these people would be fine. But like, no, you can't do that. I have to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
It's like so cruel on purpose, like for no reason.
Right. It's just like this. Like, I know there's tons and tons of pie, but you just want to make
They're just mad that their pie isn't growing as fast as it was.
Yes.
And they think that they're losing money when in fact they're still making money, more money than anyone. And all this profit just sits in some like it's imaginary bank on the stock market or whatever, just for that number to go up when all that value could just be in people's lives, and they could like feed themselves and clothe themselves and pay for healthcare and like put a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even take that much. Like these CEOs' lives would not change maybe at all. And
yes.
like, all these people's lives could be so much better.
It happened here. It was last year or some years ago. Massachusetts instituted like a very minor like tax increase for like the highest tax bracket. And the argument is like, oh, everyone will leave, business will leave. We can't be. It's fine.
Then leave.
They're all still here, I think, and now also
they leave just as like a threat or as a parasitic thing. It's like get out of here. But no, they
go.
And then
they don't want to go.
And then I think it made like an absurd amount of revenue and pays for school, statewide school lunches. And
it's like, oh, who's gonna pay for all this? It's like we have the money. We're just putting it in the wrong places.
Right.
It's either in a billionaire's pocket or inside a weapon, which also that's money in a billionaire's pocket.
Yeah, that's just right. That's just a different billionaire.
Yeah, with who sells missiles instead of whatever else.
Right, instead of anything useful.
You could do something.
But truly. On that note, we're gonna start wrapping up the show so we can get to our plugs and promotions, of course.
All right.
No, but we are approaching 2 hours where I want to start to wrap up. But before we wrap up, do either of you have any kind of like questions or statements you want to get out before we get to our promotional portion of the show?
No, just thank you for having us. It was so fun. Very privileged to be on the show, and excited to see more Indiepocalypse. I'm excited to submit more to Indiepocalypse as well.
I am privileged to have you here. This is a privilege for me than more than anything else. Of like, just a way to build the kind of loose community that I crave, which is I don't have the energy to post online or to be in Discords.
But I'm past that phase too.
But
I totally get that.
Like the energy I would spend on that, I have. If
it's something really awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right to say. It's the oddity of like I have friends who are outside of this world entirely, and I just hang out with them.
And that's good. You live your life in the real world as we were meant to.
Yes, every day I go out and I feel the blades of grass between my fingers, and I go, that's life.
Yeah, some of y'all need to just like walk down the street and talk to a person.
Yes. A mental health check is like open up Twitter, look at go to the For You tab, and if you go, what are these people talking about? What is wrong with them? Then you know your brain has been cleansed.
Yeah, it's like, this
Yeah.
is upsetting.
It's
Let's
like
get outta here.
Sometimes you just have to go, does any of this matter literally at all?
right.
Literally,
It's a truly hilarious thing where you can click on and then you will discover a new drama of a scene you didn't even know existed.
yeah. Like,
Mhm.
I love when I'm like watching a video from some community and then someone says something, I'm like, that feels like some discourse happened, and I don't have the whole context,
Yes.
but that's a clue. I'm like, it's you're like kind of like like sniff the ground. You're like, discourse happened here.
Right.
Yeah, like seeing the like shadow of a large sea monster under your
Yeah.
boat.
You're like, oh, I'm glad I didn't. That was not. Yeah, this whole.
I'm glad that missed me.
Yeah.
But that all aside, that going outside and or not or outside in life, the theoretical, the platonic ideal of outside,
Yeah.
is nice.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to also like build connections across the indie games like
Yeah.
bridge, where I'm mostly in the TTRPG space, but like meeting people and talking to y'all in the more like video game space, and like I just love indie games as a whole. So
Yeah.
I'm doing this kind of thing is really, you make the connections, you network. You don't have to be on Twitter every day retweeting each other's stuff, but
Yeah.
in the future, like one of you will be making a cool project, and then we'll hear about it. We'll try to promote it to our people. And I'll once this podcast episode drops, I'll probably send it out to my email list and be like, "Hey, there's cool conversations we had about indie games and
Yeah.
stuff."
I always think about the Indiepocalypse community, if you will, is the community of people. It's the same equivalent of people who like will see each other at cons and wave to each other and maybe chat a little.
Yeah.
But then that's it. Then they'll go their separate ways when the con ends, and they'll see each other in the next few months of the next one. And I think that's
Yeah, it's just like to see people.
right. I am a fan and I'm of like healthy, very very low stakes relationships.
Yeah, no, I went to a con and like just saw someone tabling that I was like, oh, I recognize your logo from Twitter. Like we're mutuals, and we talked for a little bit.
Yeah.
Got to say hi. I bought one of their things that they were selling, and then I went on my way. And you just have there's like multiple levels of satisfying social interaction. That not everything has to be so deep, but it's like, oh, someone who recognizes me, and it's like the cheers. Sometimes you just want to go where people like recognize you, and
Yes.
it feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good. Where you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's the person that made this really cool thing that I like, and that's the person that made this, and that is heaven to me.
Right, and then maybe you'll never see that person post, and maybe that person doesn't share anything. There's a mountain of things that I enjoy, where I don't even follow the people who make it, and I don't post it ever.
Oh yeah.
Like my online presence is like almost like 100% focused on like, oh, this is game dev stuff, like primarily,
Right.
I like other things as well. Other people who make things, and it's a different space. But speaking of spaces, we've all got them.
Okay.
And I want to get people to yours. So,
Oh, yeah.
Lex, if people are looking to find your stuff, where could they find it?
The easiest way is to go to titanrpg.com. That'll take you to my website, which has all of my like itch.io page, has my Tumblr. I used to be on Twitter a lot, but now it's not unusable basically. So
Yeah.
The most social stuff I do is like Tumblr every so often, but you can keep up with me on Patreon. You can follow me there. I do RPG of the month for certain tier subscribers. December, I'm going to be giving that tier a demo of the next project I'm working on after Crush, because getting accepted to Indiepocalypse kind of gave me the confidence to start working on another game.
Well, good. I'm glad.
And so
Nice.
that it's sort of like a weird experimental depression simulator kind of. There's a main character it's called the Hollow Maid is the character, and it's about a really bad depressive episode I had, but also I'm working on some cool mechanics in Renpai and like not like a standard visual novel. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can join the Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/titanrpg, I think, and all sorts of cool goodies there.
Yeah, absolutely. I I am fans of websites. My QR code I have at events is just, it goes to my website, because once I've got you on my website, that's where I want you to be.
Yeah, once I realize, once you realize that social kind of is now has been fracturing for years, like having a space. I just have a card, like card.co, and it's like a one page. You just scroll it, but it's like it's a place where all my stuff is, and you can go find it.
Right. It's all you really need, really. It's just a website of your stuff, because you can make
a good choice.
even just a URL that you can just point to different websites.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Okay, where can people find your stuff if you'd like them to find it?
Yeah, so you can find me pretty easily at ghostsontv.itch.io. If you go there, I also have my NeoCities linked.
Yes.
And then you can find other things linked from my NeoCities. I have my Twitter linked. I'm back on main Twitter. I don't post there as often, but I figured I did need a public-facing space.
Yeah,
that wasn't my itch or Tumblr,
right?
Because both aren't great for promotion.
No, I've made a post on Tumblr fairly recently, and nothing, zero.
Mm-hmm. Which, to be fair, is what I like about Tumblr, because it's pretty quiet, so I can just kind of post in peace. But if you are trying to promote yourself, you do unfortunately have to be on Twitter. So I'm on Twitter. I'm mostly itch.io is the place where if you want to find my stuff, I would prefer you go there.
Yeah, I blazed a post there, and someone told me to die.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, the thing with the ad system is no one likes looking at ads.
No, I don't either. But I'm like, I'll pay $15 for this. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
I will say Tumblr.
Sorry about that.
That's rough. The tabletop gaming community there was very welcoming to the Twitter crowd when we were migrating, so that's what I'll say. But it's more like just indie devs all together, like reblogging each other's stuff. It's not very good for promotion for sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
reaching a new audience, I should say.
I have found the best thing for me is actually going to events.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gotta start going to cons.
Like cons has worked for me. I make way more money just in terms of monetarily. I make way more money at cons than I do my most common anecdote is I'll release a new issue, and then I'll go to a small farmers market kind of thing in Providence and make more money there as opposed to all my theoretical followers on the internet.
Right. It's tough to get people's attention these days. I come from a digital marketing background and I quit, and now I'm So it's so hard.
Right. And I say this with infinite love in my heart. A lot of the games in Indiepocalypse don't market well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love about them. I don't want them. If they market well, I probably wouldn't be interested.
They just I've had people say oh yeah, you should pay me to make trailers for you because your trailers are boring. And I'm like, well, you could say it in a nicer way. But also, how much can you gussy up a Twine game,
Right.
Yeah, I've been trying to port Video Star to Steam, and I'm like, if you read the text and the text sound I don't know what to tell you. It's really hard to cut together a quick trailer of a visual novel.
Right. Yeah, it's just they are what they are, and visual novels are, fortunately, I think they do horribly in mainstream game culture.
Yeah.
Where they're disrespected to no end, but there is a thriving visual novel side of the world of games,
Oh, for sure.
That you benefit from when everyone else is going oh, what if KFC you could date Colonel KFC?
Yeah.
Or
here's our April Fool's joke. We made a visual novel.
Yes.
And that's the entire joke.
Or it's got great I'm not like the other girls energy,
Yes. Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm just one of the games, I'm just one of the games. I may look like a visual novel, but I'm
not like those visual novels.
Yes.
The
whatever
ones
that
we all
means.
know about.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever that means.
those dating sims, which let's be honest, none of them are dating sims. Like,
They're two different game genres, basically.
right.
Yeah.
People would never survive in a honest to god dating simulation. That's for early era. I mean, I wonder if it comes out of Newgrounds, because Newgrounds actually had a lot of them.
Oh.
Oh, I don't know.
Because a lot of like these sort of
Flash games were like dating simulators.
Yeah, and they were like a lot of like born out of that stat based era of dating sims.
Right.
And I wonder if then the terminology is kind of stuck in the U.S.
Probably, yeah.
Huh. I hadn't thought about that until just now. But anyway, of course, Indiepocalypse.com is where you buy Indiepocalypse, or my itch, anywhere you buy. Especially if you're buying it physically, which you can of course purchase Indiepocalypse physically as well, in these neat little cassette case things. I highly recommend you buy it there because it's easier for me to. Itch is very bad for rewards. If say you have 56 items, it has no easy way of telling you if someone purchased one at a reward level. But my website tells me when people buy things. And you buy those. If you buy, for instance, issues 54 or 56, these nice developers here get some money eventually. And it only takes I think 4 purchases or so to equal a payout, maybe 5, I forget. Which is really not a lot of purchases for a thing. And then you get 10 cool games, and they're all just delivered straight to you, and you're paying devs. It's a cool thing. You can also sign up, of course, like everything else. I have indiepocalypse.com/Patreon. I do the thing where I just take my website and do / all the things you want. So you got /newsletter /submit if you would like to submit your games / all those different things. I also have other people's games available in this physical format that I'm pushing the physical format because I think indie devs need a cool DIY self-publishing format.
Yeah.
And these cassette cases, very cheap to produce. They are you can make them for under $3 a piece.
Oh, nice.
Which if you're not selling them and splitting them 11 ways, hey, you make your money back very quickly. There's 100 something ish, maybe 200 ish upfront investment, but sell them at 10 a pop. Hey, you're making that money back.
That's not bad at all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's 90 sales of profit. Which is basically, it's what indie artists should have. It's super cheap CDs, CDs are cheap as hell.
My physical games tabletop is $12 for the soft cover on Indie Press Revolution.
Yes, yeah.
And it's I'm still making profit because with those I have to buy them all up front when I do the print on demand stuff.
Yeah.
But you do make your money back if you don't have to charge even that much most of the time. I think even with my distributor taking some, I'm making a couple bucks on it's $12 for a cool ass game.
Right. And those things also especially friends can someone's our group really I played this game and loved it. They can pass to a friend to play with a different group.
Yeah, I've given out copies to the local gaming club. I've given out a copy to one of the local farmers and stuff. It's cool to have a physical thing that you can pass over, and that is one thing missing from today's gaming culture. It's all because it's all online.
Yeah,
physical stuff is really cool. I love this.
Yeah, I forget what it was. Anyway, this is a whole other tangent. I'm not going to go down because we're going to wrap up the show. Okay, Lex, thank you both for joining me here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
A lot of fun. We're going to leave the show. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, bye.